In just 54 seconds, what was supposed to be a friendly chat turned into one of the most explosive meltdowns in talk show history. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, completely lost it on Graham Norton's couch last night, resulting in a fiery showdown that ended with her being kicked off the show in front of a stunned studio audience. The cameras captured every single moment as the beloved host took her down, exposing contradictions and lies that left Meghan furious and storming off set. Before we dive into this absolute car crash of an interview, make sure you subscribe to this channel. We bring you daily videos exposing the royal family's darkest scandals. Hit that subscribe button now, because you don't want to miss what we uncover next. The atmosphere in the studio was already thick with tension when Meghan walked onto the stage. Graham Norton, known for his cheeky humor and ability to make anyone feel comfortable, greeted her with his usual warm smile and that trademark laugh. The audience clapped politely as Meghan settled into the famous red couch, adjusting her designer dress and flashing that camera-ready smile she's perfected over the years. Graham started off light, as he always does. He asked Meghan about her latest projects, her life in California, and how she was adjusting to everything. Meghan gave her practiced answers, talking about her podcast, her Netflix deals, and how she was finally living her truth. She spoke in that soft, carefully modulated voice she uses in interviews, painting a picture of someone who had overcome so much adversity. But Graham Norton didn't become one of Britain's most beloved hosts by letting people coast through interviews with rehearsed talking points. He's known for asking the questions others won't, and he wasn't about to let Meghan control the narrative tonight. "So, Meghan," Graham said, leaning forward slightly, his tone still friendly but with an edge that made the audience sit up straighter. "You've spoken a lot about your struggles with the British press and the royal family. But there are quite a few people who've come forward saying your version of events doesn't quite match up with what actually happened. How do you respond to that?" The smile on Meghan's face froze. Her eyes went hard for just a second before she recovered, letting out a little laugh that sounded forced. "Well, Graham, I think we both know that people will say anything to discredit a woman who speaks her truth, especially a woman of color who dared to join an institution that wasn't ready for change." Graham nodded slowly, but he wasn't backing down. "Right. But I'm not talking about random people on Twitter. I'm talking about palace staff, people who worked with you directly. They've said that some of the claims you made simply didn't happen the way you described. What about that?" Meghan's jaw tightened. "Those people were part of the problem, Graham. They were the ones who refused to protect me. They stood by while I was being destroyed by the tabloids. So forgive me if I don't really care what they have to say now." The audience was completely silent now. You could feel the tension building like a storm about to break. Graham Norton shifted in his seat, and his expression changed. The friendly host was still there, but there was something sharper underneath now. "Okay, but let's talk specifics," Graham continued. "You claimed in your interview with Oprah that you and Harry got married 3 days before the actual wedding in a secret ceremony in your backyard. But the Archbishop of Canterbury himself came out and said that wasn't true, that what you had was a private exchange of vows, not a legal marriage. Why did you present it as if you'd actually gotten married?" Meghan's face flushed. "That's not. You're twisting what I said." "I'm not twisting anything," Graham replied calmly. "I'm literally quoting what you said. You specifically stated you got married 3 days before. Those were your exact words." "We had a private ceremony," Meghan insisted, her voice rising slightly. "It was meaningful to us. That's what mattered." "But it wasn't a legal marriage," Graham pressed. "And you knew that when you said it, didn't you? You presented it as if the royal family forced you into this big spectacle when you'd already gotten married. But that wasn't true." Meghan stood up suddenly, her hands clenched at her sides. The audience gasped. "I don't have to sit here and be interrogated like this." Graham held up his hands. "I'm not interrogating you, Meghan. I'm asking you to clarify statements you've made publicly that turned out to be misleading. That's what journalists do." "You're not a journalist," Meghan shot back, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're a talk show host who's trying to make me look bad for ratings." The audience let out a collective "ooh" at that. Graham Norton raised his eyebrows, and a slight smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Well, that's a bit rich coming from someone who's built an entire career off giving interviews about how badly you were treated. Let's not pretend you're above using your story for profit." Meghan's face went red. How dare you? Do you have any idea what I went through? The racism, the abuse, the lack of support? I'm sure it was difficult, Graham said, his voice steady. But you've also been caught in several contradictions, Meghan. Like when you said you weren't given help when you were feeling suicidal. But then it came out that you'd actually been offered access to therapists and counseling services multiple times. That's not true, Meghan shouted, her composure completely shattered now. Several people in the audience jumped at the volume of her voice. Graham pulled out a card from his jacket pocket. Actually, it is true. There are records showing you were offered mental health support on at least 5 separate occasions. You declined each time. Meghan's mouth opened and closed. Those weren't real offers. They were just trying to shut me up. How do you know that if you never even tried? Graham asked. You're telling me that 5 different times people offered you help? And all 5 times you decided it wasn't real help without even giving it a chance? The audience was completely transfixed now. This had gone from a standard celebrity interview to something else entirely. Meghan looked around wildly, like she was searching for an escape route. You don't understand, she said, her voice shaking. You don't know what it's like to be trapped in that system. You're right, I don't, Graham agreed. But I do know what it's like to watch someone claim victimhood while simultaneously contradicting themselves at every turn. And I think the British public is tired of it, Meghan. That was the breaking point. Meghan took a step toward Graham, her finger pointed at his face. Screw you, Graham. You're just another white British man who can't stand to see a strong woman stand up for herself. Graham didn't flinch. Is that really what you think this is about? Because from where I'm sitting, this has nothing to do with you being a woman or your race. This has everything to do with you lying and getting called out on it. The word lying hung in the air like a bomb. Meghan's face went pale, then red, then pale again. I have never lied. Really? Graham leaned back in his chair, completely calm despite the chaos unfolding. Never? Not once? Because we can go through the list if you'd like. The wedding thing we already covered. Then there's the claim about Archie not getting a title because of racism, when actually it was because of rules set in place over 100 years ago. Or the claim that you had your passport taken away, when multiple sources confirmed you traveled internationally several times. Should I keep going? Meghan was breathing hard now, her chest heaving. This is a setup. You brought me here to ambush me. I brought you here to have a conversation, Graham said. You're the one who's falling apart because someone finally asked you to back up your claims with facts. Facts? Meghan laughed bitterly. You want facts? The fact is I was bullied out of the country. The fact is I was never accepted. The fact is the royal family is racist. Graham's expression hardened. See, that's interesting. Because you keep saying the royal family is racist. But when Oprah asked you who made the comment about Archie's skin color, you wouldn't say, Harry later said it wasn't the Queen or Philip. So who was it, Meghan? Because if someone's truly racist, why wouldn't you name them? Meghan's hands were shaking. I can't say because it would be too damaging. Too damaging to who? Graham pressed. To them or to your narrative? Because if someone's actually racist, they deserve to be called out, don't they? Unless, of course, the conversation didn't happen the way you implied it did. It happened exactly as I said, Meghan screamed. The audience was dead silent now, watching this meltdown with horrified fascination. Graham stood up now too, facing Meghan directly. Then name them. Right here, right now. If someone in that family made racist comments about your unborn child, tell us who. Because otherwise, it sounds like you're using the accusation of racism as a weapon, while refusing to provide any actual evidence. Meghan's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. I don't have to prove anything to you. You're right. You don't, Graham agreed. But you also can't expect people to just believe you when your story keeps changing, and you refuse to provide any concrete details. That's not how this works. This is exactly why I left the UK, Meghan said, her voice rising again. Because of people like you who interrogate and doubt and question everything I say. You're all the same. Actually, we're not, Graham replied. Some of us just believe in accountability. You can't make serious accusations against one of the most famous families in the world and then get upset when people ask for proof. That's not how being a grown-up works. The condescension in his tone was the final straw. Meghan grabbed her bag from beside the couch and turned to the audience. You know what? I don't need this. I don't need to sit here and be disrespected by someone who clearly has an agenda. The only agenda here is getting to the truth, Graham called after her. But if you want to run away instead of answering tough questions, that's on you. Meghan spun back around, her face twisted with rage. Run away? I'm not running away. I'm choosing not to participate in this character assassination. It's only character assassination if the character you've created is false, Graham said. And based on this conversation, I think we both know it is. Go to hell, Meghan spat. Graham's smile was cold now. Very dignified, Duchess. Is this the truth you're living? Throwing tantrums when someone challenges you? Meghan looked like she wanted to throw something at him. Instead, she turned to the producers off camera. Get me out of here. Now. Graham addressed the audience directly. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've just witnessed what happens when someone who's used to controlling the narrative loses that control. It's not pretty, is it? Shut up, Meghan hissed. Just shut the hell up. Why? Graham asked. Because you don't like what I'm saying? Because it's uncomfortable to have someone point out the inconsistencies in your story? This is what real scrutiny looks like, Meghan. This is what happens when you're not sitting with a friendly interviewer who lets you say whatever you want. A producer appeared at the edge of the stage, trying to escort Meghan away. But she wasn't done yet. She turned back to Graham one more time, her voice shaking with fury. You have no idea what you're talking about. You sit here in your comfortable little studio, making jokes and kissing up to celebrities, and you think you understand what I went through? You don't know anything. Graham's voice was calm but cutting. I know enough to recognize when someone's playing victim while actually being the bully. I know enough to see through the act you've been putting on for years. And clearly, I've struck a nerve, because if any of this wasn't true, you'd be able to defend yourself instead of having a meltdown. I'm not having a meltdown, Meghan yelled, which just proved his point. The audience was completely captivated by this train wreck unfolding before them. Let me ask you one more question before you go, Graham said, his voice deceptively pleasant. Do you ever take responsibility for anything? Or is everything always someone else's fault? Meghan's mouth opened, but no words came out. She stood there for a moment, trembling with rage, before she finally found her voice. You're disgusting. This whole thing is disgusting. I was told this would be a respectful interview. It is respectful, Graham countered. Respect doesn't mean I have to pretend your contradictions don't exist. Respect means treating you like an adult who should be able to answer for things you've said publicly. I'm done, Meghan said, her voice cold. I'm done with you. I'm done with this show, and I'm done with this damn country. Well, at least that last part is true, Graham quipped. You left years ago. That was it. Meghan let out a noise that was somewhere between a scream and a growl and stormed toward the exit. The producer tried to guide her, but she shook off his hand. The cameras followed her as she marched off the stage, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. Graham turned back to the audience with a look of mock innocence. Was it something I said? Some people in the audience laughed nervously, but most were still in shock. Graham sat back down on his couch, straightening his jacket. You know, folks, he said conversationally, I've been doing this show for a long time. I've interviewed hundreds of people, politicians, actors, musicians, even actual members of the royal family. And in all that time, I've learned one thing. If you can't handle being asked about things you've said publicly, maybe you shouldn't say them in the first place. The audience applauded, still processing what they'd just witnessed. Backstage, they could hear raised voices as Meghan continued her meltdown, demanding to know who had set her up, who had fed Graham those questions, who was responsible for this disaster. But in the studio, Graham Norton just smiled at the camera. Well, that escalated quickly, didn't it? I suppose we should move on to our next guest, who hopefully won't storm off when asked a simple question. The audience laughed, the tension finally breaking. But everyone in that room knew they'd just witnessed something extraordinary. They'd seen the carefully crafted image Meghan had built for herself completely crumble under the slightest bit of pressure. They'd watched her go from composed and in control to screaming and cursing in a matter of minutes. The doors at the back of the studio burst open one final time as Meghan made her dramatic exit from the building entirely. Through the open doors, the audience could see her getting into a waiting car, slamming the door so hard the whole vehicle shook. Graham raised his glass of wine to the camera in a mock toast to honesty. he said with a wink. May we all be brave enough to handle it when it comes our way. The audience erupted in applause as Meghan Markle's car sped away from the studio, leaving behind one of the most explosive and confrontational interviews in talk show history. Graham Norton had done what countless other interviewers had been too afraid or too polite to do. He'd asked the hard questions and refused to back down when the answers didn't make sense. And Meghan had proven, in spectacular fashion, that she couldn't handle it.